This is actually my original copy of Final Fantasy VII, the one I had as a kid and beat over and over again, conquering every side quest, finding every ultimate weapon, and mastering every single materia, because I do genuinely believe that this is the best game ever made. But now, after watching the 3 new minutes of gameplay they just released for the Final Fantasy VII Remake, I do believe that this game might end up being even more perfect. What's up gamers, Dreamcastguy here, and right now, across the ocean, there is Tokyo Game Show going on. This is basically a huge collective of a bunch of the best developers showing a bunch of stuff that they didn't get a chance to reveal at E3, the more finished projects, and Square Enix is there to melt our faces. Now, this is actually a pretty big trailer. 3 minutes doesn't sound long, but they managed to reveal tons and tons of new stuff. But the biggest thing is, they clearly made this to try and put our fears at ease about certain aspects of the game. Like, one of the things that people were a little bit worried might be cut is actually the cross-dressing scene from the original Final Fantasy VII. It's a scene that's obviously very silly and is played for laughs, but some people were thinking that it might be toned down or removed. But in this trailer, we actually see that it's going to have all the gooey graphic moments that it originally had. But more than that, they actually revealed a bunch of new stuff like the summoning system. So the magic in Final Fantasy VII is just gigantic. A lot of the stuff you're doing in this game was definitely the first time that we saw giant special effects and really eccentric moves that would actually take up the entire screen. When you used a summon, it truly felt like a god was showing up to the battlefield, and it looks like they've just decided to crank that up to 11. Now, I don't want to make this comparison, but I was not really a fan of Final Fantasy XIII. Something that 13 did do well, though, is that whenever you were actually fighting and you summoned in one of the different summons, they actually changed the nature of the fight. It felt more dramatic and it felt more epic when you called one of these deities onto the field. Well, it seems like Final Fantasy VII Remake is trying to take a page from that book, because when we saw these things, it was a big deal. It was like, hey, attention, the nature of fights is about to change. Now, something I think is the most important to try and address, because it's definitely being cleared up in this trailer, is that, so for the last couple years, there's been rumors that the first episode of the Final Fantasy VII Remake series is going to be Midgar. A lot of times people were actually even leaking that it was going to be called Episode Midgar, and some of us were concerned that that wouldn't be enough content. Midgar, when it comes to the actual game, is basically the tutorial. You play it for the opening hours to learn how everything works, why you're going to be equipping stuff, how you purchase upgrades. Well, I don't have that fear anymore, because it looks like they're going to be trying to add in a lot of extra flavor in between the major moments. Because when you think about it, the entire escape of Midgar is relatively swift. It's kind of just meeting Aeris, meeting up with Avalanche, blowing up a couple reactors, and then jetting out as soon as you can. Whereas in this, they're actually showing that they're going to be putting in a bunch of extra fights that in the story makes sense. Like, one of the things they showed is the Turks showing up, and the Turk design is fantastic. It's very similar to Advent Children. And then, once the Turks show up in the original church meeting scene, instead of just Cloud walking out the back door and escaping through the roof like he does in the actual game, he fights them. He fights the Turks, which is an interesting added element. To be able to fight in this crumbling cathedral is definitely a nice touch. But we actually saw a lot of that. Throughout this trailer, we saw a lot of different scenes that originally were incredibly short. Times where you basically waved at an enemy and then walked away. But I think that's good. Stretching out a game in a remake is a very, very difficult task because you don't want it to feel boring. I mean, let's be honest, one of the worst parts is when they take a game that managed to be short and sweet and then they stretch it out for the sake of making it seem like a bigger project and it feels stale. The Final Fantasy VII Remake absolutely does not do that. From what we've seen, it actually looks like they're trying to make it a bigger experience. More chances to actually talk about this world and show us what's really going on. One of the things they actually showed in this trailer that did make me laugh is the scenes at the gym. Because remember, during the whole time we are actually trying to cross-dress in Final Fantasy VII, you have to earn the different elements of your costume. You have to find the dress, you have to do a squat contest in order to get the wig, and you have to try and get some perfume and makeup. If you want to win this fashion show, you need to look your very shiny best. Well, in this, they actually showed additional tasks you're going to be doing at the gym. It looks like instead of just being a 5-second mini game that you do once and never again, it looks like they're going to try and stretch it out and maybe have us do more stuff at the gym. Maybe we get a little bit more backstory. Now, something I am still a little bit curious about is we don't know how much this is going to incorporate. The Final Fantasy VII Remake, from what we've seen right now, it is still just the original story of FF7 retold with a new paint job. Now, the reason I say that is because there has been some speculation that they may try and roll in more of the Final Fantasy VII universe. A lot of times people call this the compilation, because we have had several different sequels and prequels, if you count the film. Well, here's my thing. I still think that's what they might do. Now, we haven't seen it yet, but they have shown us more in this trailer just along the guidelines of combat and stuff they're going to do to try and add to the story, but we haven't seen like a cutscene that's straight out of Crisis Core. However, I do still believe that they might add that in because of some of the other details. Now, the thing that definitely struck me the hardest in this is that Shinra's president is now a much more major character. In the original game, you talk to him like twice. You wave to him at one of the factories, and then you see him up in the Shinra headquarters. And that's it. Whereas in this trailer, we actually see him appear as a giant hologram and giving a speech about their role to play. If we're actually getting more lore and more backstory about Shinra as a company and the people behind it, I fully expect that we're going to see more about their ties to Cloud. I mean, keep in mind, the entire soldier program is extremely corrupt. They were making super soldiers out of volunteer people. Now, that's crazy, but some of these people got turned into actual monsters and stuff. And while they actually very lightly touch on that in the original game, this does seem like they may try and expand on it more. Like they may give us a bigger opportunity to realize what's actually going on. Why Shinra is evil, despite the fact that, I mean, beyond just them actually sucking the life force out of the planet, they are a big billion-dollar corporation that's like Disney with power plants. This definitely leads me down the path to think that maybe we'll get something really crazy like, so in this first game, it only takes place in Midgar. In fact, some of the trailer scenes were super big, spectacular moments of the Midgar time, like the destruction of one of the sectors. I'm trying not to actually spoil anything because I feel weird about this now. I know everything that's going to happen in Final Fantasy VII, line by line. I could recite the entire game piece by piece, button by button, letter by letter. But now it's kind of about to become a new game with fresh changes, more twists, and characters coming back. But I am thinking that what may happen is this first game establishes the characters. They give us a chance to understand Cloud and Aerith and the Turks, and then from here, perhaps they'll do something where we actually get a chance to see more stuff in the later games. Because remember, there was actually some optional cutscenes in the original Final Fantasy VII that showed us more about the lab where Cloud was made, and also things like seeing Zack right after they escaped. So it makes me think, what if those cutscenes were bigger and not optional? What if they were mandatory? What if we got an hour-long flashback like we have in the Calm Inn, but instead it's about what's really going on? Show us a time to actually walk around inside the story of Crisis Core. The potential right now is extremely untapped. Now that we've seen so much, what I'm really craving myself is to see an actual demo, to have them release something on the PlayStation Network that lets all of us play it. I feel like that may be coming very, very soon, and it gets me excited. But additionally, I am curious as to how much they're planning on spacing out these episodes. This first part of the Final Fantasy VII Remake seems giant and super good, but what happens when it's over? Where does it end? When will it be over? Those are the questions that still stick in my mind, but I feel like we're going to know all about it very, very soon. What did you think of this new 3 full minutes of gameplay? Were you as blown away by the summons as I was? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, share with your friends, and subscribe if you haven't already. But do me the biggest favor of all and keep dreaming. Ooh boy, man. Final Fantasy is coming up fast. Thanks so much for watching that video. If you want to see something else, you can always click this link to see what I put up last, or, subscribe and see what's coming up next. Also, I promise that whatever I do, it'll try not to suck.